Picture this. 3 AI models get dropped into Roblox Studio with one goal: build the ultimate Naruto game from scratch. No pre-built assets, no mysterious developer hiding behind the curtain, fixing everything after the AI leaves. And definitely no we'll patch it later strategy. Every script, every animation, every combat system, every menu, every quest, every boss fight, every particle effect, everything has to come from the AI's own planning and coding ability. Sounds simple until you remember a Naruto game is basically a collection of 50 different systems all pretending to be one game. You've got chakra, stamina, wall running, hand signs, elemental jutsu, NPC AI, bosses, clans, leveling, PvP, ranked matches, missions, villages, cosmetics, inventory, shops, cutscenes, and enough visual effects to make your graphics card question its career choices. So this isn't a contest about who writes the cleanest lure function. This is about who survives building an entire Roblox experience without turning Studio into a slideshow. The first contestant through the gate is ChatGPT. Right away you notice something interesting. It doesn't sprint toward the finish line. Instead, it starts asking the boring questions that nobody watching YouTube wants to hear, but every developer secretly appreciates. What's the gameplay loop? How many clans are there? Is this an open world or a lobby-based battleground? How should progression work? What happens when a player logs out? These aren't flashy questions, but they're the foundation of every game that doesn't completely collapse after 3 updates. ChatGPT behaves like the one person in a group project who insists everyone spends 10 minutes making a plan before touching the keyboard. At first, it feels painfully slow. You want explosions. You want Rasengans flying across the screen. Instead, you're staring at diagrams explaining how chakra regeneration interacts with stamina. Somehow, though, that boring planning starts paying dividends because every new system slots into the previous one without causing 3 unrelated features to explode. Then Claude walks in, and the atmosphere changes immediately. Claude approaches the project like someone who's been handed a massive software engineering assignment with a strict deadline. Everything is organized, everything is documented, every function has a purpose. You ask for a combat system, and Claude doesn't dump 500 lines of spaghetti into one script. Instead, it separates combat, animations, cooldowns, hit detection, networking, effects, and balancing into modules. Looking through the project feels less like opening a Roblox game and more like opening software built by a development team that actually communicates with each other. It's clean. Suspiciously clean. Almost too clean. You begin wondering if Claude alphabetizes its folders for fun, because every asset somehow ends up exactly where you'd expect it to be. Finally, Grok arrives, and within minutes something ridiculous is happening. The trees are swaying. The lighting looks cinematic. The particles are exploding across the map. NPCs are throwing fireballs at each other while dramatic sunsets reflect across rivers that nobody asked for. Grok seems determined to make the game look expensive before making sure it actually works. If you walked into the map without knowing better, you'd think someone spent months polishing screenshots for a trailer. It's impressive. Genuinely impressive. The danger, though, is that shiny visuals have a habit of distracting everyone from systems hiding underneath. A beautiful house still needs plumbing, and no amount of bloom effects changes that. The first challenge is movement, because Naruto characters don't exactly stroll around like they're shopping for groceries. They sprint across forests, jump impossible distances, run up walls, leap between rooftops, and somehow make gravity feel optional. ChatGPT starts by creating a flexible movement framework. Sprinting shares logic with chakra dashes. Wall running checks surface normals before allowing movement. Double jumps integrate naturally with future abilities. Every mechanic feels like it was designed knowing 5 more mechanics would eventually join it. Claude reaches almost the same destination, but gets there through immaculate organization. Every movement ability lives in its own module, making future updates painless. Grok gets movement looking incredible almost immediately. Characters slide, flip, dash, and spin with satisfying animations, but occasionally someone launches sideways into another dimension because physics had a disagreement with networking. Combat arrives next, and suddenly everyone's confidence gets tested. Punching someone in Roblox sounds easy until latency enters the conversation. What looked perfect in Studio suddenly turns into 2 players punching air while damage appears 3 seconds later. ChatGPT spends considerable effort making combat server authoritative. Hitboxes stay consistent, damage validation happens securely, exploits become harder. The downside is that everything feels slightly conservative because security often comes at the expense of flashy shortcuts. Claude balances networking remarkably well, maintaining clean architecture while minimizing unnecessary server calls. Debugging becomes refreshingly painless because every system explains itself through its structure. Grok immediately creates combat that feels spectacular. Giant explosions, massive impact effects, camera shakes capable of relocating your eyeballs. Then someone with 200 ping joins the server, and half the attacks begin negotiating with reality instead of following instructions. Then come the jutsu, arguably the heart of any Naruto experience. Nobody downloads a Naruto game hoping basic punches carry the experience. They want Chidori, Rasengan, Fireball Jutsu, Shadow Clones, Susanoo, massive water dragons, ridiculous explosions covering half the screen. ChatGPT approaches abilities methodically. Every jutsu inherits shared cooldown logic. Chakra costs remain configurable. Damage formulas reference centralized balancing values. Creating new abilities becomes surprisingly efficient because the framework already exists. Claude somehow makes the entire ability system even cleaner, introducing reusable templates that make adding future content almost effortless. Grok creates abilities that immediately become thumbnail material. Fire engulfs forests, lightning fractures the sky. Giant avatars tower over mountains. It looks phenomenal until 3 players activate ultimate abilities simultaneously and weaker computers begin contemplating retirement. Artificial intelligence for enemies becomes another battlefield entirely. Making an NPC walk toward a player is trivial. Making one dodge, block, retreat, coordinate attacks, and avoid getting trapped inside trees is significantly less amusing. ChatGPT builds behavior trees that feel logical. Enemies react sensibly to player actions. Bosses cycle through recognizable attack phases. Claude produces similarly intelligent opponents, but with beautifully separated state machines that remain easy to modify. Grok creates bosses with spectacular attack animations and cinematic entrances, but every now and then one decides the nearest mountain is the true enemy, spending the next minute unleashing devastating attacks against solid rock, while players quietly collect free rewards. Then progression enters the picture, and suddenly everyone's design philosophy becomes obvious. ChatGPT emphasizes balance. Experience curves feel measured, unlocks arrive consistently. Grinding exists without becoming unbearable. Claude builds an elegant progression structure that's easy to expand, supporting clans, prestige systems, and future content updates with minimal headaches. Grok occasionally gets distracted by adding visually impressive transformations before fully considering how quickly players obtain them. Suddenly, newcomers are unlocking powers that feel like they belong 200 levels later, turning early PvP into an educational documentary about losing fights before realizing they started. By now, Roblox Studio resembles a battlefield itself. Scripts pile up, assets multiply. Every update risks breaking something unrelated. This is usually where ambitious projects begin collapsing under their own weight. ChatGPT keeps introducing systems carefully, testing compatibility before moving forward. Claude's organization starts paying enormous dividends because tracking bugs feels less like archaeology and more like following labeled signs. Grok keeps pushing presentation to incredible heights, producing environments that look like promotional artwork, but every added visual layer increases the challenge of maintaining smooth performance across devices. Mobile players start looking at their frame rate like they're watching a countdown timer instead of a performance counter. And here's where things become interesting, because building a Naruto game isn't about who creates the coolest Rasengan in isolation. It's about who still has a functioning game after adding clans, villages, PvP, quests, raids, crafting, cosmetics, trading, matchmaking, anti-cheat, daily missions, achievements, game passes, data stores, events, and seasonal updates without causing half the player base to spawn underneath the map. That's the point where impressive demos stop mattering and long-term engineering starts separating contenders.